everyone. Welcome to the Hammer Museum. I'm Claudia Bester. I'm the Director of Public Programs at the Hammer, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to tonight's conversation with Bamby Salcedo and Elana Redfield. Before we begin, I want to thank our co-presenters at the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law, which is the leading research center on sexual orientation and gender identity law and public policy. The work they do is incredibly important, and the Hammer is just thrilled to partner with them on tonight's program. I also want to thank the team at UCLA's Trans Up, which is a social space for trans, non-binary, gender fluid, and gender questioning students of the UCLA community, and also has branches for mentorship and advocacy. There's a Trans Up table out in the lobby where you can find out more about the work that they do and about the Trans Day of Remembrance Vigil, which will be held tomorrow at 5 p.m. on the UCLA campus. The Transgender Day of Remembrance is an annual observance that honors the memory of the transgender people whose lives were lost in acts of anti-transgender violence. This is Transgender Awareness Week, which is a week designed to bring attention to the trans community by educating the public about who transgender people are, share stories and experience, and advance advocacy around issues of prejudice, discrimination, and violence that affect the transgender community. Today we're bringing together two brilliant, successful, and incredibly effective women who are out there on the front lines doing the work to ensure trans people have access to services like healthcare, housing, legal representation, and legislative power, and are treated with dignity and respect. Elana Redfield is an attorney and is the Federal Policy Director at the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law. In this role, she coordinates the Institute's legal research and analysis related to federal and state policies that impact lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, and intersex people. Before joining the Williams Institute, she worked with the New York City Department of Social Services, where she oversaw the agency's initiative to improve safety net services and homelessness interventions for LGBTQI communities. Prior to that, Elana served as staff attorney for the Sylvia Rivera Law Project, where she used legal representation, impact litigation, public education, and policy strategies to help meet survival needs and promote the self-determination of low-income transgender people and transgender people of color. Sorry. Bamby Salcedo is a transgender activist and the founder and CEO of the LA-based Trans Latina Coalition, which was formed in 2009 by trans Latina immigrant leaders to organize and advocate for the needs of trans Latinas. Through the coalition, she also led the effort to build the Center for Violence Prevention and Transgender Wellness in Los Angeles in 2017. Bamby's work covers a lot of ground. In addition to advocating for the trans community, she's worked tirelessly for many overlapping communities in issues such as immigration, the elderly, sex workers, HIV and AIDS healthcare and prevention, homeless youth, detained migrant families at the border, and the incarcerated. She's just a shining example of advocating for human rights and dignity for the voiceless with love and warmth, as well as seriously effective strategy and coalition building. Bamby received her master's degree in Latinx Studies from Cal State LA. In 2014, she was awarded Lambda Legal's West Coast Liberty Award for her work in Angels of Change, which is an organization that provides healthcare services for trans youth. In 2015, Out Magazine recognized her as one of their Out 100 Pioneers of the Year. In 2016, she was invited to participate in a summit at the White House called the United States of Women, where she shared the stage with then Vice President Biden. And this year she was awarded the 2022 UCLA Distinguished Leader in Feminism Award from the Center for the Study of Women. She's also served as a speaker and panelist at innumerable national and international conferences, and there are not one, but two documentaries about her, the 24 documentary Transvisible, Bamby Salcedo's Story, and the 2021 film La Quinceañera. I have such massive admiration for these two selfless, brilliant advocates. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Elana Redfield and Bamby Salcedo.
Hello, beautiful people. Oh, do we need mics? Oh, they're right here. What is? Hola, hola.
Hello.
Hi.
So my name is Elana, and I am just super, super thrilled to be here with Bamby today. I've had the pleasure of working in and around trans movements for almost, well, for like 15, 17 years, and you have just always been such an incredible force. So today, I'm really excited to get to talk to Bamby about strategy and how you approach the work, how you make the change that you do. And I have a few questions to kick that off. But also, you are incredibly good at warming up a room. I wanted to make sure if you have anything you want to say before we start, to give you the chance.
Bueno, primero que nada quiero dar gracias a Dios, quien es quien yo llamo mi creador. Quiero honrar la tierra en la cual estamos hoy en día y obviamente quiero honrar la presencia en la cual su presencia de ustedes. So just honor my higher power for giving me the opportunity to breathe one more day. Honor the land where we're standing on today, and I also honor the beautiful and amazing presence of all of you. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. Take it away.
All right.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I have to always, just honor our people.
Thank you. So we are here on Gabrielino Tongvu land in Los Angeles. I'm from New York. So I do always love coming to LA, but I wanted to start by asking what are the things that you'd like people to know about the Los Angeles trans community or trans Latina communities here in LA?
Well, I think there are so many beautiful things that we can say, that I can say about our community, about who we are as people, but also as how we are making waves, really, right? I think our community is waking up from the oppression and the marginalization that we have experienced for many, many years. I mean, I'm not even going to say centuries. And so here in LA, we are a small but mighty community, right? I think, if we go with the guesstimation, right, that the Williams Institute have put up several years before, in which they said that there in the state of California there's about 218,000 trans-identified individuals. We can guesstimate, right, that the majority of those people go to either San Francisco or LA, which are considered the mecca for trans people, right? So my own estimation, based on those numbers, and I'm sure now the numbers probably have increased, I'm going to say that there is at least 50,000 trans identified people here in Los Angeles. And they are about 5 trans led organizations. And, each one of us work together in some kind of way, and have worked together for years. And so I think that's one of the beautiful things, right? That although they are separate or different organizations, right? When it comes down to our community and when it comes down to activating and organizing and supporting each other's work to uplift ultimately the lives of other members of our community, we come together. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that happened here in LA. And I want to say that I'm also very honored and lucky that I get to lead the biggest trans-led organization here in Los Angeles, but also one of the biggest in the country. And so, our community here in LA, who are trans, we're learning how to organize and how to strategize and how to insert ourselves into the tapestry of our society.
Thank you. And in fact, you have described yourself in the past as a community investment, and I love that. So thinking of ancestors and inspirations and people that you work with, or people that have passed, people that you still work with today, who would you want to invite into the room, and who's inspired you, collaborated with you, and what lessons from them would you want to pass on?
Uh, so yeah, thank you for reminding me and reminding all of us, right, that I do acknowledge that I am a community investment, right? In fact, I am the CEO of the Trans Latino Coalition, and my own definition, CEO for me, right? I'm a community elevated officer. Um, and so that is because um, it has been the community, right? My people who has been uplifted me and supported me for me to be who I am today. Um, and so, there have been many people, members of our community, of my community, who have uplifted me. One of those is Maria Roman, who is not just my sister and the movement and the struggle, but also she's my sister, right? I remember when I first started, she was my boss at one point, and she taught me and mentored me. And so she's one, obviously, who's still here, alive and thriving. And certainly, Valerie Spencer also, who is a Black trans woman who is an incredible person who has mentored me, who was always telling me, uplifting messages. That she would always tell me, like, you're gonna do great things, right? Like, I couldn't even speak in public, but she saw something in me, and so she always reminded me every time that she would see me. She's like, "You're amazing, you're incredible," and all of those things. I helped me to really developed. But there are also other individuals who unfortunately are not here physically, but their spirit certainly lives with me. Like Krista Miller is one of them, Leslie Monroy, you know, um, and many others, who I have unfortunately, um, they've passed for different reasons, right? Like I can also name Vicky Gutierrez, who was one of our clients who was brutally murdered and who was also like my sister, our sister. And so I want to call those individuals to the space to continue to uplift me and continue to uplift all of us.
Thank you, and I every time I've seen you speak, I've really appreciated the way you bring so much positivity to the conversation and to the room, and I felt that now too. It's really nice to hear also about some of the people that have brought that in your life. I want to get a little bit more specific to your experience, and you have just led such an incredible life and also made such impact. And so today's conversation, I hope we get into some of your strategies. And I thought I would start by asking about when the first time you remember making a difference, when you took the lead on a project or were part of a project that made a difference for a trans community here.
I think the very first time that I think in some ways created an impact, and it wasn't just for the trans community at the beginning. I remember I did have the opportunity to get into a treatment center because I was, I was using drugs and I was very addicted, and like I have like a whole history around that, which included incarceration. I spent about 14 years of my life in and out of prison. But when I was at this treatment center, I saw some injustices. Didn't have any support for LGBTQ people. I was the only trans woman in that treatment center, and my experience there was horrible. To be honest, um, but I was there in this space because I knew that if I wasn't there, well, I wanted to save my life, because if I would have like walked out of that space, I knew that I was going to go back to drugs, and I knew that I was going to go back to prison and possibly be on, being murdered or dead, or something really huge was going to happen to me, right? And so like I was scared of that, because that was something that I was feeling, right? Which it was sort of like my spirit was telling me like, chill, right? Like stay. So despite my experience, and so I remember I had a really an amazing person who was my case manager, who was always encouraging me, and who also I asked them like if I could get facilitation training to have a group for LGBTQ people in there. And so he did, send me to a course to learn how to facilitate a group. And so I got my certification and all of that, and I was able to create a space for LGBTQ people. And also, in the same space, they didn't have Spanish speaking anything, and so I also created a Spanish speaking group, and so that was sort of like my initial involvement, but it really radicalized when the murder of Gwen Araujo happened in 2002. I was enraged, and I was really mad and sad and angry and all of these feelings, and understanding that because I did have the privilege to at that time have a job and have a roof over my head, and understanding all of my experiences, but also seeing that my sisters, the ones who I once stood up in a corner with, were also going through the same things. And so I also felt that it was a responsibility for me to do something about it. And so that's how I started being involved, and that's how we started. I'm going to say the murder of Gwen Araujo really transformed the trans movement. And so, I have been part of all of that.
And it's interesting, we were just talking, this is unscripted by the way, we were just talking backstage about direct services, right? And also just being in contact with people in a community who are going through things either that you might have gone through or that you know people who are going through, and all the ways that you have found to support them, ranging from everything from like facilitating a group in English and Spanish to making sure someone's bills get paid, right? And so I'm just curious if you want to talk a little bit about that, of what it's like to work to help community members meet those day-to-day needs in that kind of environment.
I mean, unfortunately, even in 2022, right, like our community continues to have challenges, just every day, right, like meeting their everyday needs, and so, and that is exactly why we exist as an organization, right? Because when we started in 2009, when the Trans Latina Coalition started, we were thinking about, let's influence change in the structures and the institutions who continue to marginalize us, right? And so we started doing that, and it was all volunteer. But then, as we were trying to organize nationally, we were also seeing that members of our community were not having access to those basic needs and services that they needed. And so that's why our national group decided that we also needed to move into doing service provision, because we believe in the empowerment of our community through service provision, right? If you're able to support people with their basic needs like housing or food and those basic things that people need, then you're able to organize and you're able to mobilize and empower our community, right? Like in other ways. like develop their leadership, for instance, right? Developing organizing skills, advocacy skills, and all of those things. But if people are struggling with services, they're not going to focus on that. And so that's why we do that. And we have been really lucky to build multiple services at our organization. We have, you know, we have transitional housing. We have legal services, HIV prevention services, violence prevention services. We have a program for aging trans people. We have legal services. We give food every day. We have clothes. We provide hygiene kits. But some of those programs are funded, but there are also other needs that are not necessarily funded by programs, and that's why it's critically important that people, uh, support our work, right? That donate to our organization, because that is money that is unrestricted, and that is money that we could use for people to be able to, to have in some ways better qualities of life, right? Like yesterday, for instance, there was this trans woman who needed money to, for her medication, right? And so we are able to support her with that, right? Or other people who, just recently got an apartment, right? And so, but they don't have enough furniture, they don't have anything. And so we're able to like maybe purchase, cazuelas or pans or, you know, toilet paper or like things that people need, right? That is often not covered for some of those for these grants, and so that's why we do the best that we can for sure. Obviously, there are limitations, but we make sure that we support our community to the best possible way.
It's funny because my next question was going to be what your theory of change was, but I feel like you just laid it out, like thinking about community power and how to build it. And I appreciate that also you mentioned about unrestricted money, right? Because oftentimes grants are really limited in what you can do with them and don't always build power and community.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, right? Like, it really depends, particularly if it's government money, right? That is just, to provide services. Like, the government don't invest in people to, learn organizing skills or advocacy skills and stuff like that. So, it's great that they are. Different, particularly in the private sector, right? Like philanthropy, like plays a big role into investing in our communities, and so that is where we also can do some of that work. The work that needs to happen to empower our community and to make sure that our community understands what is the budgeting process like here locally and statewide and even nationally, right? Like how system work and how we can influence change in those systems.
Um, I really appreciate that. And another thing we talked about earlier was about how the work that Trans Latina is doing is inspiring other people across the country to think about how to take a holistic approach to the needs of community members and also how to build empowerment into service provision and empowerment into every aspect of the function. And I see that happening in New York too. So it's very cool. Yeah. I'm going to ask you about I'm going to shift a little bit to strategy and tactics. So there's one particular tactic that you are sort of famous for, which is direct action. And so I'll say, I'm a Dodgers fan, and there's the famous incident with the banner drop at Dodger Stadium. There's also an unbelievably important direct action that you were leading with the task force in DC. I'm sorry, then the Create and Change conference. And I'm wondering if you want to speak to the role, if you want to talk about any of those things for our audience, I'm sure they would love to hear about them. But also, can you speak to the role of direct action? Why is it important?
I think it's important for us to understand that change only happens when people demand, that those change need to actually take place, right? And we have learned from, other movements, right? Particularly, through the civil rights movement, the Black Panther movement, right? Like I think in some ways, um, for me and for us, it has served as a model, right, to build the service provision that we are providing for our community that is specifically designed to uplift and really value, transgender and conforming and intersex people, right? And so we know that those type of movements have created changes, right? And so um, that's what we need to do, and like we also have learned that well, for me particularly and for many members of our community, particularly for trans women, right, our lives are always on the line, right? Like every single day that we walk out of our house, um, you know um, Lord Hunter said that it's a revolutionary act, right? And so um, like if we get arrested, we get arrested anyway simply because we are trans, right? And so if we are going to be arrested or incarcerated by protesting, then at least we are creating or contributing to that change, right? And so for us it's what we have to do, and I think in some ways has served our community, right? Because I mean, you mentioned creating change, and that happened in 2015 when we had to organize and protest during this national conference because, well, there was a couple of things. One was because they invited the chief of police to open the plenary, like welcome people to the plenary to the conference, and then Jesse Hernandez, who was a young trans genderqueer person, was brutally murdered in Colorado. And so obviously we were outraged about that. But also we saw it as an opportunity to really demand from the broader gay and lesbian community to really invest in trans leadership, right? And so I mean, that certainly created changes because, I remember after we did that protest and we shut down the stage, um, there were, commitments from like the Arcus Foundation to invest $20 million in trans movement. And from there were other foundations that created programs that are specific to invest in other trans-led organizations. And so, I mean, you can see that in the last 7 years, there are more trans-led organizations that are being funded and that are being really popping up, and that they're being funded by different philanthropic institutions, but also organizations like ours, right? Like we are now in a position that we are able to fiscally sponsor other trans-led groups and organizations, right? Like what we are doing right now with an initiative that we have where that is funded through the State of California Department of Public Health. And so, that has helped us and has helped our movement really, but those changes had happened because of the direct action that we have been able to do, and I mean, it's just what we have to do. I know that people don't like it, but oh well.
Well, it's so incredibly important, and you could feel it too in 2020 when there was a shift in the conference as well, and a lot of more focus on particularly trans people of color in that conversation. Um,
The Creating Change Conference organized by the LGBTQ Task Force. And I think there's a video on YouTube or
Yes.
something, so people can check it out. It was very powerful, actually.
yeah.
Were you there?
I was not there that year,
Oh,
but
okay.
I was there in 2020.
But you heard.
Oh yes, everyone heard. And to your point, it made such an incredible impact, and these kinds of actions have such important impact. Um, but direct action is only one part of what you do and what you have done. You also do policy work and you talk to policymakers. Um, I'm curious, thinking about particularly like the criminalization or over policing of trans communities, and talking about how trans people are profiled and arrested for doing sex work, and are generally often in conflict with the law. Even thinking about ID documents, in healthcare, all these laws have often been very unfriendly to trans people. So I'm curious how laws have worked for you and worked against you, and what you think about the law as a sort of way of making improvements for trans people.
That is that's an interesting question. Because I'm gonna say that even here in California, right, that California is the state that has the most inclusive legislation and protections for trans people. Um, but we're still experiencing discrimination and uh, you know again, the criminalizing of our community continues to happen, the profiling that happens, um, but I think we have to also understand how trans people, and particularly trans women, right, like, are situated within our society, and how we are pushed really to engage in the street economy because of the lack of opportunities, and how we're pushed to live and what we call like hot neighborhoods, right? That are prone to have high rates of drug addiction and sex work and all of that, and even yes, it is true that the majority of us are pushed to into the street economy, but because we live in these neighborhoods, right? Even if we're walking down the street to the grocery store or whatever, we're accused of doing sex work or loitering and all of these things. And we're profiled and stopped and detained and questioned and oftentimes even arrested if we don't have documents that identify us. And so these are the things that continue to happen. That's why for us it's important that we empower our community to also understand their rights, right, and how they can fight this. But also for us as an organization, it's important that we continue to empower our community, but we also work with legislators to make sure that we change all of these practices. Um, you know, Unfortunately, the police isn't, police or law enforcement are institutions that are just crazy, just to say the least, and so we have tried for many, many years to work with law enforcement to do trainings and roll calls and all of this and that. The past 20 years we've tried to do that, but they don't change their ways. So to us, it's like we don't believe in the police. We don't work with the police because they don't want to do the right thing, and so for us it's just a waste of time, right? And so for us it's important that we also work with, that we enact legislation that protects our community, but that we also make sure that those laws or pieces of legislation that are also implemented, right? Because obviously, legislation is introduced every single day, um, but then there's so many laws in the books that people don't even know about it, and so the work that we are doing is to make sure that our community um, understand also the law, right? But also that other people understand the law and that they don't violate the law. And so I think for us it's important that we not just enact and push for legislation that protects our community, but that we also make sure that those pieces of legislation are also implemented.
There's actually one particular type of legal change that I was very interested to read about. I'm kind of I've been interested for a long time in the Equal Rights Amendment, and I was curious. I read that you had testified about the Equal Rights Amendment, and I wonder if you want to speak a little bit to why that's important for trans communities.
Oh my God, I think the Equal Rights Amendment is important for all people, right? It's something that has been tried to be done for 100 years, and it really is a change in the Constitution of the United States to provide equal protections to all people, right, including women. And so it's just unfortunate that people do not know about the Equal Rights Amendment, right? And that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. There's still, um, only Congress can make this happen, right? And so it hasn't happened in 100 years. Like we've been close, but it hasn't happened. And I hope that people get to understand what the Equal Rights Amendment is and how it will not just benefit trans people, but it will benefit all people, right? Um, and I just hope that people get to learn more about it and that they really understand the importance of making sure that Congress makes this a constitutional right for all people.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So in shifting gears again a little bit, I want to talk for a second about the work that our two organizations are planning to do together. So Trans Latina Coalition and Williams Institute are about to partner on a really exciting research project focused on trans community members in LA City and LA County. So begs the question, what do you think about the role of research? Why is research and data collection important, and what you think we might learn from projects like these?
Well, I have learned, right? So, like, again, I'm very privileged that I have had the opportunity to also be an academic, right, and learn about research. My thesis is specifically about trans Latina women, and so if we are not able to prove the need, right, like the need is non-existent, right, and because there is so very little data um, about our community, right? It's important that we highlight also who we are as people, what our needs are, and obviously make sure that we provide possible solutions, right, for us to have better qualities of life. And so, I mean, I'm so grateful and really proud that we get to partner with the Williams Institute to do this project right here locally. But I think it's also important for people to know and understand that right now, as we speak, there's the United States Transgender Survey, right, that is happening right now. That I want for people um, to fill up the survey, right? It takes a little time, 15, 20 minutes maybe of your life, but it's important that we let the world know that we exist, right? This particular survey, gives visibility to trans people, right? And so the whole idea with the Williams Institute and working with the county and the city of Los Angeles, it really is to highlight um, the needs of our people and make sure that sooner rather than later there are specific resources that are allocated for our community so that we don't just get to survive, but that we get to thrive, right? We need to move from survival to thrive.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
And on that point, the USTS still in the field now. If you try to take it and you're like getting kind of weary, there is a really cute video in the middle, right? So I would support that. Definitely, when we rely on the U.S. Trans surveys for so much. And I'm also just so excited to see what we'll find from our LA County and LA City focused work.
For sure, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll shift to take some questions from the audience if there are some out there. But this is thinking about why we're here now, and thinking about Trans Day of Remembrance, and thinking about Trans Day of Awareness, Trans Week of Awareness. We often also we focus on the incredible levels of violence and harm that our communities experience and trauma. And right now we have this wave of anti-trans legislation, and we see people making all kinds of different attempts to cut off gender-affirming care, and to target youth who may be trans or gender nonconforming. Not to mention, this is happening in the context of immigration policies that aren't good, and we still have so much work that has to happen around changes to criminal justice, and many other things that are affecting our communities, right? So I set the stage that way so I can say, what are you feeling optimistic about? What are the opportunities, and where do you see the rays of sunlight right now?
I mean, there's a lot of beautiful things that are happening, for our community and certainly for our organization. Um, it, One of the immediate things that I can think of is this Saturday, we're having our fashion show, which we created to contrast Transgender Day of Remembrance, right? Transgender Day of Remembrance is a sad day for our community, although we remember members of our community who have been brutally murdered. Um, it's for me personally, it's a sad day. For many members of our community, it's a sad day. Um, and so we created, garras, which is it's an acronym, but it's also garras is like las garras que se pone uno, like the clothing is in slang in español, or the claws of an eagle, ¿verdad? Las garras de un águila, de un león, and so, but it's actually an acronym. So it's groundbreaking activism, redirecting and reforming all systems. So it's a fashion show that highlights trans, gender nonconforming, and intersex people as high fashion models. We also highlight upcoming designers who are trans and queer people, and it also serves as a fundraiser for our community, for our organization, also for our community, of course. But we're also, we're in the process as an organization also to purchase a piece of land for us to build our center. And so, that's it's exciting. It's a lot of work for me, of course, but I'm also learning a lot about, like land and architecture and you name it, right? Real estate and all of that, development and all kinds of stuff. And so we're hoping that we do that in the next 3 years. We actually have identified a piece of land. We have been approved for a loan to purchase this piece of land, and we just need to raise $18 million. So if you
No
want
big
to,
deal.
yeah. So if you want to be part of the change, please support our community. We're going to launch a capital campaign, even though there's challenges, right? Because I don't know, like wealthy people who can donate millions of dollars, like they have, with other centers that have been built, right? But I believe in the power of the people, if even if we can just donate $1 or whatever we can, I know that we're gonna do it. So that's exciting, and certainly we are continuing to build more services for our organization, for our community through our organization. We are going to have, right now we have a partnership also with USC Keck Medicine, developing a gender health clinic that is specific for our community. So we're super excited about that. There's so many different things that we're working on, and certainly, I also want to say, like publicly, because it came out that we actually received a donation from Mackenzie Scott for us to do, whatever we want to do, but we're going to use it for our center. So So we're really excited about that, and we're also excited that we were, that they saw our work and they, they're supporting our work. So I'm so excited for what the future is bringing for all of us.
Well, I definitely can't think of a better organization to take that step with buying the land, and I also can't think of a better person to raise $18 million. So I very strongly believe in us. We can do it together.
Yes, I believe in the people. Like I'm not doing this; all of us are doing this. Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to ask if there's any questions from the audience for Bamby. Okay, I see a person.
Pregunten.
Yes.
Hi.
Oh, there's a microphone coming right behind.
Oh, perfect. Hello. It is. Okay. Hi, my name is Tyler, he, him. Me and my fellow UCLA students are here. I'm representing UCLA Trans Up, and I was like tabling outside. But these people are also in Trans Up, so I think we're all kind of wondering like what advice you might have for student leaders with kind of like grassroots organizations that might not have $18 million.
Well, we don't have $18 million, so let me just say that. We need to raise $18 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I want to first say thank you so much for just being you and for being visible and organizing in campus and other places. I think, when we do that, we serve as models, right? Like our people get to see the possibilities, right, that we can create together. And so I want to say thank you so much for that. I think one of the things that we need to understand is the importance of fundraising for our community, right? Like even if it's, I don't know, selling cookies or, for us when we started Garras, right? I remember this was 8 years ago, and I remember the first year we raised $5,000, right? Which it was amazing, but people, other people think like, oh, $5,000 is nothing, right? But when you are doing volunteer work and you get $5,000, it's a lot of money, right? Like that you can do work, and so I'm naming, 8 years ago Garras, and this year, our goal is to raise $200,000, right? And we're almost there, like this year we're getting like corporate sponsors and things like that, and so I'm really excited, and my hope is that we get to raise those $200,000 that will go towards, our new center. But I'm gonna say, like just get together with your peers and think about ways that if you need to raise funds to continue to do your organizing work, also reach out to other organizations like ours, and to see how we can find ways to collaborate together, and see how we can also support your efforts, and maybe give some pointers, and maybe do some introductions to some potential funders and things like that. So I would say just don't be afraid to ask, really, because I know that for me it was really challenging at first because we're trained not to ask, right? Like we even, culturally, right? As a Latina, right? We're told like you gotta do, right? Like you gotta work for, you don't ask and stuff like that. But like I learned from white people, they ask, and so like I'm gonna ask too, so and it works, como this hay un dicho que dice que habla y Dios te oye, right? Or in inglés como es como like close mouth don't get fed, right? So if you don't ask, you won't get. So like I remember, so just out of nowhere, I asked for a sponsorship for $100,000, right? Like a presenting sponsor. That's how we did our sponsorship docket, and um, we send it to someone, and they didn't give us 100, but they gave us 50. So that's how it is. You ask for something, and they may not give you what you asked for, but they give you something. So just ask.
And I would bring back something you brought up earlier about how when we talked about direct action, that UCLA, right, has some of the better policies and practices around LGBT students, and that's because students and faculty fought for those things, right? And so always remembering that it does take fighting to make change.
Yeah, just don't give up on yourself and what you believe in.
Any other question? Oh, yes, several questions in the back. The person in the white shirt?
Hi, yes, my name is, thank you. Hi, my name is Elia, she, her. In the beginning, you mentioned how when you were in the treatment center, you didn't have any support. You were the only trans person that was there. And with all those struggles you were going through, you were trying to get over your drug addiction and everything like that. With being alone and being in that mental state, what gave you the drive to stay there and actually get the help you felt you needed at that time?
For me, it was like really a life or death situation, right? Like I knew that if I walked out of that treatment center, I would be dead, or I would, or we ended up in prison for a long time or something. I think, I'm a very spiritual person, so I think also having that connection with my higher power, was what helped me also, right? Like just asking, please give me the patience before I punch this MFs, or just asking for guidance and patience, and just stick it out. I don't honestly don't know, but I know that if I didn't stay there, like it would have been worse, and so for me it was more of like, just hang in there, right? Like hang in there, and I did, and it paid off.
Thank you so much. I also have a follow-up question. Do you know if there is support for people there now?
I'm not completely sure, to be honest. I think what I'm gonna say is that there are many organizations that do claim to support trans people, but it's only to get funding or to, just to say that they do, but in practice it's very different. And so I cannot honestly say that they do, because the majority of trans people who we send to different treatment centers, end up, like the majority end up leaving those treatment centers. And so, yeah, I can't really tell you from this particular treatment center how better they're doing. They probably are doing better. I mean, this is like more than 20 years ago. I hope that they're doing better, but I, I don't know. But they probably claim that they do.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ariel, he, him. You talked about Maria's role to you as a mentor and educator, and you said how she basically gave you such a drive and a passion for this field of philanthropy and also the work that you carry out today. What do you think the most important thing that she taught you, or that was left within you, that ended up giving you that drive? And what type of life do you think you would be living now if there was an absence of Maria through your formative stages?
I think there was another a trans woman who I failed to mention, who her name is Brenda del Rio Gonzalez, who was also a facilitator at a support group to an organization that I later started working at. And so what Maria and Brenda did to me was they allowed me to see the possibilities, right? Back in the 80s when I started my transition at 18, there wasn't this, I'm talking about like 88 or something, right? 1988. There wasn't nothing really for us, right? Like any type of support that we needed or that we would get was on the streets, and so that was for me then like the possibilities, right? And so then years later, seeing this trans woman working at a professional setting, right, allowed me to see the possibilities. And so what Maria did was that she was actually the program manager to they had a transgender program at this organization. Um, and so she was the program manager for this transgender program, and she would she taught, yeah, I started as an outreach worker, and so she taught me how to do reports, how to collect data, and she would take me to do presentations to to shelters and to the police about trans sensitivity and that kind of stuff. And so just by her like telling me like come with me, right, and from by me seeing her presentations and that kind of stuff, like allow me to see the possibilities, right? And it's funny because she was my boss then, and now I'm her boss. you know, so we work together. But she's my sister. You know what I mean? Like, I'm saying I'm her boss because, like, in paper or whatever, it's true. But we work together. She's my sister, and I we support each other.
And with the absence of both of them, do you think that you would be where you are today, or no?
I'm not completely sure, to be honest with you, because I am just grateful and honored and lucky that they were there at that time when I needed them, and I'm not completely sure, but I'm just grateful that I get to be here today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have time for one more question, and then we'll wrap up. And I see a hand over here. Actually, you were first.
Thank you for taking my question. I'm Rava, she, her, they, them. I am currently working with like an organization on my campus in order to like raise more money for student resources for all students regardless of background, specifically marginalized ones. But I think right now with the way the UC system is dealing with our TAs, but also just the way that we kind of have to beg for more money to help our students, it's kind of hard to like have faith in the systems and like deal with all the bureaucracy, especially in regards to changing institutions that aren't built for us and facing the elitism of like you need to just be thankful that you have a spot here. My question is, how do you continue to have faith and also inspire that faith within community so that we can progress and move forward? Because I think that's been the biggest thing that I am thankful that those before me were able to do. But yeah.
Well, let me just say that they are the ones who are lucky to have you there and all the people who you're organizing with. And I'm also going to say that, I think we need to also believe in our people, right? And have people from the outside, like, come and, like, protest and mobilize and, hold people accountable, and be unapologetic, and be unafraid. I mean, I think what is beautiful is like student organizing, right? And the leaders of these institutions are supposed to listen to students, right? And so, like, if there's the ability to organize among students is amazing, but also invite other people from an outside who are like us or who are like are not afraid to fuck shit up, you know. So yeah, and it's hard, you know. It's hard always pushing against the system, you know. But just don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your people, you know, and just call on people, and you know, people will come and support you because you know, as long as you know you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you know, people see people's work, you know, and people believe in your work, and people will support your work, you know, and whatever those leaders of those institutions, you know, don't want to do, I think there has to be an accountability process for them to do, and that's why you know it's important to organize with different groups, right? Like, because they also get money from the government, they get money from like different places, right? Like, I mean, they have endowments and all kinds of stuff. So like, just call them out and tell them like, you know, like you need to do better for our students, right? And just you know shame them on. I mean, right now online it's very popular, so shame them like that, you know. Yeah, and they'll respond. Trust, yeah. Do like a cute TikTok, like you see this MF right here, you know, like this is a person in charge, and like you know, like do all of that, you know, like shame them, you know, like just say like they're not supporting people the way they need to, and they have all this endowments and things, and what are they doing with their money? They're just stocking it there, like they need to like give it out, you know. You need it, and you need to have that money, you know. Yeah. Just you know, just build a strategy, and you can make it happen. Trust.
So this is like priceless strategic advice from a movement leader. So I hope everyone's taking notes. and I mean proven. I mean results, right? The work that you've done over the years is incredible, and it's really made an incredible, immeasurable difference in the lives of so many trans people across the country. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for everyone who came out today.
And thank you so much for the amazing facilitation. Yay! Thank you. Please give it up for her. Yes, thank you. I guess we can. I know that you had a question, but we can answer after if you want. Yeah.
Great.
So we're all good. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, and like for those who are watching.